Alright, guys. So, this is the third part, basically, of the card game. Just real quick, if you haven't seen the magic types or the original just explanation of the card game, you should really go and watch that before you watch this, because this will be easier to understand once you watch those two, because I'm literally going in order. So now that you've caught up, real quick, this is just basically how the secondary cards would look like on the character deck. Secondaries will also have a second deck called Antiques. We'll get more into that later. But for right here, right now, you just got the name, the health of the character, what type it is, which is secondary, what class it is, which depends on the class. It could be S class, G class, F class, X class, R class, but not C class. It will also say what type of secondary it is up here. Then this is the image of what this is where like the character design would be right up here. Just let it refocus, sort of. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's how that is. Sorry for like the color change. Just trying to mess around with my camera here. Then this will also have an image of what the weapon looks like. And then this will say how much energy they can hold and how much energy they can absorb at once. Then this is basically, this will have a description, like the name of the ability and what the ability does, and then how much energy it costs. And they'll have usually like 4, 5, 6, depending on the character, abilities. And then, of course, the further down you go, the more the cost and the more descriptive and usually more powerful the ability. All right, now let's get into this real quick. So, class types actually do matter in class types. Like classes really do matter in cards once you get past the magic type, because magic type has class C, and that's basically just means you're part of magic. But class R can attack further up in the further up in. All right, no, I'll just remember the 3 by 3 by 3, like the 9 columns. So R class can attack any column instead of just having to go into the first column. S class can jump over a column and then attack the column behind, or I guess you could say row. We'll say they could jump over a row and then attack the row behind. Right. F class can block S class and R class from attacking further, along with blocking. So F class will have a certain amount of on their abilities, a certain amount of damage they can block before they actually start taking damage. So F class is basically just tanks. G class, their attacks can attack multiple columns and rows at once. I know say on their abilities how much of a column or row. It's basically just an explosion damage, and it'll say, oh, this much damage to the character they're attacking and this much to the characters around them. X class can upgrade other characters' attacks. So like it'll be like this ability can upgrade opponent's damage based off this for this many rounds, or this can upgrade their speed for this much for this many rounds, and things like that, right? And usually X class and F class are weaker damage wise, and they're more of a strategical things and protective and things like that, right? And let's see what other we had. F, S, G, F, X. Yeah, that's all of them. So now that was just a real quick class, introductory. I might have a whole different thing just describing classes and different characters. But a big thing about secondaries is secondary F class are really cool, and I'll describe that in a little bit. But now back to secondaries. How much energy they can hold. So they could have like 3,000. How much energy they can hold, but how much they can absorb at once might be like 300. So they can absorb 300, and then after 10 rounds of absorbing 300, they'll be at the max how much they can hold. And then this ability might cost like 100 or 450, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, things like that, right? And so secondaries are also very strategical in how much you absorb and then what abilities you want to use right then and there. It still is one move to absorb and one move to use an ability to attack and things like that. And of course to place it down, but that's at the end of the turn. Types of secondary. So there's actually a vast amount of types of secondaries. You can have elemental secondaries. You can have secondaries that their energy or the amount of damage they do compact over time. Ones that can have multiple different ways they can absorb. Ones that have very specific ways they can absorb. Like just a vast amount of secondaries. So this will basically just say what type of secondary it is, which isn't really super duper important unless if it's elemental against magic types and other secondaries, right? So down here, which I didn't write down, if it's an elemental, I'll have ones that their attacks don't work well against. So like if it's a fire secondary, then down here it'll say, oh, water ones aren't really good. It'll have it'll actually say fire secondary and then have a water symbol that it's not good against, right? Or like if it was lightning wouldn't work well against earth because earth is ground, things like that, right? But then you also have secondaries that okay, this ability costs this much, but if I hold on to this ability or hold on to the energy, my energy naturally sort of does what magic types, and it continues on getting bigger and stronger each round. So then instead of using this ability once, like let's say I absorbed 100, I can only this ability costs 100, but let's say I wait 3 rounds and now I have 300 because of the type of secondary it is, and I can use this ability. Usually ones like that, their abilities aren't super strong. The more specific and more time consuming and difficult the character or secondary, or the more restrictions they have, usually the more powerful their attacks. Okay. Now let's see. A good example is you might have a secondary that can only absorb lava energy, right? So then he can't absorb energy just randomly. He'll have to absorb lava energy. So let's say a magic type attacks him with fire. Well, then that wouldn't work. He might be able to absorb half the energy, but not all the energy. But if it was lava, he'll be able to absorb all the energy from the lava attack, right? And he'll be able to put it all in here, right? And so you'll also have secondaries that say down here, if it's a very specific one, they'll say how much, or not how much, but what type they can absorb and how much of types that sort of connect. Like with lava, it's sort of like earth and fire, so you can absorb half of earth, half of fire, things like that. Or you can absorb, if they can absorb 300 normally from lava, then you can only absorb attacks that are 150 for fire, 150 for earth. But they'll have descriptions like that. While if it's just a normal compacting type, or just a normal random secondary, they can absorb energy just every round, just naturally, just absorb. He can absorb this much, but then his abilities aren't as powerful versus a lava dude. This attack costs this much, and it does this much damage, while an attack that dude isn't very specified, the cost might be the same, but it might be weaker, or things like that, or it might just be a different speciality. And now let's see. Really, that's about it for secondaries. Speaking about secondaries in F class, so a secondary can absorb all the energy from someone that's attacking. And you keep hearing me speaking about people making moves while during other people's turns. You do have a certain amount of time where you can do a reaction, but that will cost a move next time for your turn. So let's say you use all 10 of your moves during your first round, and then it's your opponent's round. Technically, you have 10 moves right then and there. You just have to wait until your opponent's turn is over. But if you decide to use a move while your opponent's attacking you, then you use up a move during your next turn. So when it's your turn, you'll have those moves. But now going on to secondaries, and why this is so important for secondaries is because a secondary can absorb energy from your opponent's attack. So let's say, I was saying, 300. Let's say this is just a normal secondary that absorbs energy naturally from everything. So let's say your opponent attacks you with a fireball that costs 300 energy. You can absorb that 300 energy. Now, not only is that attack nullified, but now you also have 300 energy right here to absorb, right? Or that you're holding. So then during your turn, you start off with 300 energy, but one less move. Now, the big thing is, if you have fire types that can absorb a lot more energy, because usually magic type attacks can cost a lot of energy if they're really good attacks. wow, if they just absorb random energy, they don't absorb as much energy. It's really good if you have like a fire magic type versus a fire secondary, because the fire secondary can absorb a lot more of it and just naturally win. Usually, if your attack is, your max attack can be 400 energy, but I can always absorb 600 energy. I can just always absorb pretty much every move that your fire attack is, or not even attack, but like, your fire stuff. But that is only for attacks, is the instant reaction. It can't be like if they're putting up a defensive barrier and you're like, oh, I absorbed that right now. No, you have to wait till your turn. Let's see. Honestly, secondaries are, in my opinion, a really good turn-based character because they can absorb energy like that, and they work really well with F class. And like I was saying, if you can absorb all the energy of an attack, then the attack doesn't exist. But if you have an F class, you can block the damage from the attack, and you still might not be attacked by the damage. So that's why F class and secondaries work really well together. Sort of a explanation about secondaries as well is, like I said, if this was 300, let's say the opponent's attack was 301 and I tried to absorb it, nope, I wouldn't be able to absorb any of it, because if it's more of it, then you can't absorb that energy at all. It's only if it's the exact amount or less. If it's more, you can't absorb it at all. And that's sort of where antiques come in. Antiques is the second deck that you pick up, right? And you use it, and basically what it is, it'll have a symbol of sort of an antique or something that looks cool. And in the top, it will say how much energy you can absorb from it. And that energy is just base. It can be absorbed by anything. Even if you're a very specific class of secondary where you can only absorb, blue lava, for example. Well, this doesn't say blue lava, but it's just energy and you can absorb it, right? And that energy, it could be like 3,000 and you can still absorb, the 300 that you have to absorb it each time. So that's sort of a cool thing about antiques. It does cost a move, like I said, to absorb. So, but you could have 500 and you'll still be able to absorb 300. So that's why secondaries have the antiques, because honestly, you won't always have you won't always be in the perfect position to absorb energy from your opponent and things like that. And that's about it. Like, a lot of the secondary stuff is just information that you'll be able to read. This will be like the image of your weapon, image of the character. And honestly, that's about it. Like, a lot of these are sort of going to be self-explanatory when you look at the characters. The big thing is the class. You'll have to be able to know what a class does. Like, an R can attack any. On the 9, F will actually have sort of an explanation on how much damage they block. So F class, you'll have down here, or right here, like how much they block and things like that. But yeah, that's about it. Tell me in the comments if you guys misunderstood anything, or if there's anything that I didn't explain very well about how secondary class works. I'm sort of just trying to get through this quick, things like that, but, just tell me in the comments. Like it if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. That's about it. See you.